Welcome to the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority Invoice Training Series, presented by the Employer Reporting, Compliance, and Education Division. This video will provide information on the Expense Allowance Invoice. The Expense Allowance Invoice is a bill for the employer contribution owed on the expense allowance payments made to the county judge executive, jailer, and sheriff for their operating and training expenses as set out in statute. The elected official receives this allowance either monthly or quarterly from one of three agencies within the state. The expense allowance payment is issued to the elected official with the employee contributions withheld and is reported to the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority via the Department of Personnel's monthly report. Once the record is posted to the member's account, an invoice for the employer contribution is generated and sent to the employing agency of the elected official. The employing agency who receives this invoice is usually the county fiscal court or the county sheriff office if they report separately from the county fiscal court to the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority. The expense allowance invoice can be accessed from the invoice module found on the Report tab in Employer Self-Service. To view the invoice, click the invoice number hyperlink. The invoice will be a multi-page document containing the billing voucher and detail page for the elected officials. On the first page of the invoice, the Employer Information section provides the name, employer code, and address for the employer. The Invoice Details section includes the invoice number, due date for payment, and the amount due. Following the details are instructions on how to pay the invoice, which an agency can do either electronically in Employer Self-Service or by mailing a check or money order. If the agency chooses to pay this invoice by check or money order, they need to include the bottom section of page 1, which is the billing voucher, along with their mailed payment. The remaining page of the invoice contains the individual breakdown of each elected official. The elected official is identified by the last 4 digits of their Social Security number and by name, followed by the posting month the payment was issued. This is where you need to remember that jailer and sheriff will be on this invoice every month, and the county judge executive will be on the invoice every quarter, as that is how the expense allowance is provided to them. The salary amount is the total of the expense allowance paid to the elected official for the posting month, and it is followed by the employer contribution amount due for the salary. Once the invoice is issued, the agency has 30 days from the date of creation to pay the invoice. The due date can be found under the invoice details on page 1. Thank you for viewing the Expense Allowances Invoice Training. If an agency has questions regarding any of their invoices, they may contact their ERCE team through the employer hotline and ask to speak to the invoice specialist.